Hello believers, hope you're well. 2024 is rolling on. I'm at the cinema today, ahead of seeing a screening of Poor Things. Looking forward to seeing what good old Yorgos Lanthimos has pulled out of the bag this time. Hopefully a few more camera lenses. He really loves that fisheye lens, doesn't he? But, fair play to the guy. It works for him. It's a fairly classy cinema that I'm in to see this film. Someone on the row next to me has just ordered some food to be delivered to their seat. I remember back in the day you get chastised for trying to smuggle in a Big Mac meal into the back row of Chesterfield Cineworld. But, times have changed. Also, rather unwisely, I've purchased a beer. So no doubt about 45 minutes into this critically acclaimed work of cinema, I'm going to need to get to the toilet. Can't get away with weeing in a bottle here. As I say, it's not Chesterfield Cineworld. Anyway, on to today's guest, who, if she's ever had to wee into a bottle, it's probably been in the name of art. It's Australian broadcaster, artist and comedian Madeleine Culp. If you travelled across Oz, you may have seen Madeleine's I Heart Art TV show, or seen her pop up as a roving presenter for CTV Plus, or heard her on Radio Triple J. I know her from her time as a stand-up comedian through her shows like Fark, where she's been described as genre-busting and shambolically charming. Two things we obviously very much embrace on this podcast. I have to say I've found this conversation with Madeleine very relaxing, very ASMR, so I hope you do too, and hope you sit back and enjoy us for some hairy tornado stories, some chat about art and comedy and arty comedy, some discussion of perceptions of Australia, and naturally we get to speaking about Season 1, Episode 10 of The X-Files, entitled Fallen Angel. As always, if you like the show, do like and subscribe, tell your mates, drop me a line, either on X or Instagram, or at believemepod@gmail.com. Anyway, without further ado, here's Madeleine.
Is this the podcast?
Oh yeah, we're in, sorry.
Just on? Oh, good.
Really professional.
I didn't know if we were just doing some chit-chat. Okay, cool.
What, other than motherhood, and we can get into that as well, what have you been, I don't think last time I saw you was about 10 years ago. So.
Well, I know. I was actually thinking, I think one of the last times we talked, which is quite relevant to this podcast, is you were doing a Twister tour, I think, of the States. And I was messaging you saying, I've just got my hair done in Mishawaka, Indiana, and the tornado sirens went off and no one cared.
Yes! People just carried on as normal, didn't they?
I was like, can you just hurry up with this color? Cut half my side of my hair. Like, I don't care. I think we need to go. It was like over the radio, this sort of robotic noise of like, warning, get to safe ground or something. And they were just like, yeah, no, doing small chat, hairdressers do. And I was like, I'm going to die here. Let's get out.
That's amazing. It's like, yeah, when we see it, we'll start running.
Yeah. When it comes.
It's like, how strong is it?
Well, my mum always has this story. So my mum's Australian, my dad's American. And after they got married, they lived over there in Indiana for 18 months. And they were, camping or something in caravans. And she was in the shower block and came out and she was like, where is everyone? And everyone had just run away to the caravans and just left her there. And this tornado just came through.
Wow.
And I think she was like washing her hair. So maybe it is something to do. Good luck if you're washing your hair when a twister comes.
That's a nice way of looking at it. Yeah, because I'm still absolutely fascinated by storm chasing and the amount of great footage you see out there now, because everybody's got a mobile phone. There's CCTV cameras everywhere. Back in the day, 20 years ago, you'd get some grainy VHS footage and you'd be happy with that. You know, if it was a massive F5 tornado barreling through, you'd be pretty pleased with that. But now it's like you've got drones going on, all sorts. There's amazing footage of this. I'm totally obsessed with this guy called Reed Timmer, who you probably know. He's like kind of self-styled most enthusiastic storm chaser, and he was on that program Storm Chasers. He shouts a lot. It's like, oh my god, there's one on the way, that sort of thing. Yeah. But he's got a new drone, and he flew that up in the air the other day, and there's some of the footage of this. I mean, I'm getting excited, but it's people's lives and livelihood, isn't it? And so that's sort of disconnect, you know, like we're all punching the air. Oh my God, look, it's taking that barn. But it's like, you know, there's some cows in that barn. Yeah. Someone's livelihood.
I wonder if it's just like, is it so foreign, like you and I, where we've grown up, we've never had anything like that? I mean, sure, Australia is pretty deadly in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But that's a freak occurrence if you do get, sometimes you get cyclones in some parts.
Yeah. So whereabouts in Australia are you now?
Yeah, so I live in Sydney. I was born and raised in Sydney, so I'm still here. I haven't gone very far. When I met you, I was like living over in the UK. And then after that, I was in America for a bit and kind of ran out of money. Really. It's like, I think I need to go home for a bit where the wages are pretty decent.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. My window into Australia, like my window into a lot of things, is through films. And the filmic output of Australia often does not paint a glowing picture of the place.
What was the last Australian film you watched? I'm just curious.
I watched a film about 2 nights ago called Royal Hotel. Now, the filmmaker she's called Kitty Green. She did a film called The Assistant, which was sort of based on sort of Harvey Weinstein. But it had the same feel as that, where there was this kind of dread all the way through it. And it was 2 young women backpackers, and they both ran out of money. So they decided to get a job in this hotel in the middle of the outback. And you got Hugo Weaving in it as well, who looks totally different these days, the ravages of time. And one of the guys from Snowtown as well. But it was like, something's going to go off here. What's going on? And I don't know if it felt very uniquely, again, as someone who's never been to Australia, I'm just going off what I see in the movies, but something uniquely Australian about it. It's like very defined in the fact that you could drive for like 8 hours and never see anybody.
Yeah. And also those like horror stories. I think there's a few films that feature backpackers because the way the visas work here, I went to the UK as an Australian and I got 2 years, no questions asked. But here, you want to stay an extra year, we're going to make you work picking fruit for a year. That's how not a whole year, but you have to spend a big chunk of the second year of your visa doing rural work, which is mostly picking fruit.
Interesting.
So I think there's a lot of stories that come from that trauma, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, do you get out and about then much, or you, I guess it's difficult with the baby now, but have you travelled around much in Australia?
Yeah, well, I've really been lucky and to travel and do gigs around. That's mostly the reason why I've seen anything outside Sydney, to be honest. It's like I've had a stand-up gig, or there's a channel out of Melbourne, a community TV channel, Channel 31. They've been very kind and get me to host stuff. And like last year I did 6 weeks in Western Australia, just going up and down the coast, going to wineries, distilleries, breweries. So that's a pretty good gig.
I'm so excited to talk about that as well, and also your art output, because I've done my due diligence and done some research on you again before this. So I was like, oh my God, she's like Australia's Bob Ross, and I had no idea. Because that art show that they started up, I think it was a couple of years ago now. I think I was the first host, and they were trying to describe to me what they wanted for this, kind of filler show, really, like where they could chuck on at any hour. And I was like, they're like, Bob Ross, it's going to be like Bob Ross. I was like, oh, is it instructional? They're like, that's funny.
That was one of the references, but then they were like, but not instructional, but just like. So that first season was such a mind experiment in a way, because originally Shane, the producer, he's great, bless his heart. He's like, can you just crank out like 8 of them? And I was like, oh my gosh, my hand is gonna just cramp. So in the end, we had 5 that he did over 2 days of these. I think they're like 20-minute shows or something, but basically like no director, that kind of vague direction, and then just me locked in the airless studio because the one camera operator was there and the director was in another room. And then they would just like wildly circle their hands when they told me like to wrap up for a commercial. And then it was just free reign.
It's amazing.
So I think by the end of the series, I was sort of just been talking to myself for so many hours and like kind of being instructional, just kind of being an idiot. And yeah, it's like a study in like what it's like just to have someone locked in an airless room for quite a few hours with a cramping hand.
It's so good. It's like, because I put it on, I was trying to figure out what the tone was, and it could be, you're so good at it because it could be, it's almost like you played it like a little wink to the camera. Like I absolutely loved it. Like, it's very genuine, and obviously you're a great artist, and so you can just totally watch it on that level. But also, you know, if I can imagine students watching it late night, you know, after a few ago, this is just performance art, you know, in a way.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And it's funny because they do just play at random times, and I know because I get messages on my Instagram or Facebook being like, "I just watched you do this," like because I do mostly Australian natives, so some obscure animal or plant or something, and they're like, and yeah, and the time is like 3 a.m. And I'm like, you're definitely watching this like in your boxes with a burrito, probably. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Did you study art then? Because I seem to remember your comedy stand-up shows having an element of like what an exploration of what art is, or, you know, is this art? And have you always been interested in that? And is it something you studied?
I think, yeah, there's that period when I was like doing Edinburgh Fringe and over in the UK, I was really kind of interested in that subject of art. What is it? Like those grand notions of art with a capital A, and then that art that you just kind of make in your everyday life and find those little bits of magic, and poking fun of everything in between. But back to your question, no, I didn't study like drawing or anything or art. I just came up with it. I was just kind of doing a bit of traveling at one point, and I think those coloring in books were like fashionable or something, and I thought, well, I'm not going to buy one of those things. I'll just draw my own thing to color in. And then I don't know, that's sort of how it started. And I just got really inspired by it. I'll just find these really beautiful photos or interesting photos of animals, and then I just really liked capturing their personality, because my drawings are not to scale.
Right.
They're very much like, you know, just more of a mood or a tone to them than being to scale. So yeah, just doing it heaps, and just something, you know, you know what it's like doing comedy. It's so a lot of times it's here and it's gone, but when you're putting a mark on a paper, you're putting, you know, playing with the negative and positive spaces. You're putting a black line on a white piece of paper. It's just something that's there forever, and it's so permanent. It felt pretty crazy at the beginning, to be honest. Like, oh, this is bold. I'm putting a really thick outline here.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. Yeah, the sort of transience of the sort of moment of stand up, and it, you know, unless you record it being gone, and then this, you know, another creation of yours is potentially around forever. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it.
Yeah. Because I also did, before I went to the UK, I did a bit of radio, and that was also very much like that. Like, you're driving so much content. You probably know this from podcasts, but at least podcasts stay around a little bit more when you're live on air and you're just creating and pumping out content, and then it's gone. And it's like, oh, it's great for the moments in. But yeah, that art was such a nice way to stretch that other side of your artistic muscle, I guess.
I was going to say, do you find it relaxing? What do you feel when you're drawing? Do you feel anything? Because I know I spoke to a few musicians, and there's that old, like, terrible, oh God, he's the dude from Rolling Stones, Ronnie Wood, when he was asked about what does he think about on stage, and he says, I don't think, I feel, which is a bit like, you know, I'm going to be sick. But maybe there's an element of truth in that, where it's like you just channeling what you're channeling, but is there one particular emotion that comes up when or does it change when you're drawing?
I definitely feel like I hyper focus, and that's so nice to just be all absorbed into something that I can just draw for hours and only know I've been doing it from my neck cramping. And getting lost in those patterns, because sometimes I get really intricate with like drawing every sort of feather on a bird, which I've been told is quite unnecessary, but it's that repetition I really enjoy too. So I don't know what the psychoanalysis behind that is. It's like I just want to tune out and just focus on these lines on paper. And yeah, it's just yeah, I think in that show as well, I was trying to sort of describe what I was drawing, and I was just thinking about all those different sizes of the pen and the lines that they create, and that's something really fun to play with too. Is it's like when you've got a pen that with ink and you hold it on the page, you're going to get a blob, or you can lift it really lightly and stroke it very heavily and get something totally different, and it's still with this one instrument.
I think there's something about, I mean, we touched on it before, about Australian flora and fauna as well, which is, they say everything's bigger in America, but I think everything's more unique in Australia, I guess. Justin Kurzel, the filmmaker's brother, Jed Kurzel, who's a composer in his own right, and composes all Jed stuff, and also did like one of the Alien films. But he said he used to base a lot of his music on the sound of Australian birds, because there's nothing on earth that sounds like an Australian bird. It's like loud. It is this loud, such a piercing.
Yes.
I mean, do you feel like, I guess my question is, do you define as Australian, and what do you think that is, and what does that mean to you?
I definitely think I do. Like, yeah, growing up here, and I think so much of the kind of unconscious landscape kind of infiltrates you in a way. Like, the birds being loud is so true. Like, I feel like our birds are just so aggressive, beautiful, but very aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, our magpies have a swooping season, and if you Google that, you will have quite a few hours of enjoyment there of magpies coming down, swooping at you. I remember as a kid, they told us we had to put an ice cream bucket, like a square, on your head and draw big eyes. And that was the only way that a magpie wouldn't swoop you. Like, I don't think they even sell those type of ice cream buckets anymore. So I don't know what the kids are doing these days. But my generation, we were all walking around with these ice cream buckets for fear of being terribly swooped.
I'm going to say, so turning yourself into like a movable scarecrow in a way.
Basically, yeah.
That is great.
Like, it's just the normal thing to do. I remember one time clearly, because my parents, they live in the suburbs of Sydney, but next to it is a big nature park. I say that, it sounds like, oh, that's a beautiful national park. But no, it's just like sort of a bit of land that they never developed, and it's sort of been reclaimed. Anyway, there was a kid from my primary school I heard just screaming. We went out the back thinking, oh my gosh. And yeah, he was just getting violently swooped by a magpie from one end of that park to the other.
Wow.
And I think they take out like four eyes or 15 eyes or something a year.
That's, oh man. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? It's like, it's not the thing you'd expect. It's like not the snakes or the spiders, it's the magpies are going to get you.
Yeah, and they're everywhere. It's not like, oh, don't worry, like you only have to go to these remote parts to worry. No, they're like in Sydney, they're everywhere. So yeah, that I think you're just living with that constant threat. Maybe that's what's in that movie, that apprehension of something bad's going to happen. We've just got that in the back of our heads the whole time.
I mean, again, that does fuel into the creative output of the country, I have to say.
Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, maybe that's it. But yeah, I don't really know what Australian really is in terms of like how it's directly impacted my artistic creations or whatever. But yeah, I think it's hard to not be affected by this country when you're in here.
Oh, I was going to get political then, but maybe we should spare that.
I know.
And especially in this sort of echo chamber of social media as well, if you don't, you've got to have an opinion on everything.
Well, yeah, we just came out of that referendum which was a really depressing day for, I guess, not the majority of the country, because there are people like me that voted that they wanted it. It's just kind of a kick in the guts. It's like sometimes you think, Australia, we've come so far, and and you get things like that happen, and you think, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, well, let's move, let's go somewhere, I don't know where, but
Yeah, I struggle to kind of get an idea of what the argument against that legislation going through was. And I just, maybe that's my own sort of bias, but I was like, I don't know why you wouldn't, I couldn't get my head around it.
I know. Like, it was such a little ask of people too, right? Really. And I don't know either, because I mean, no one's ever said to my face that they were voting no. Everyone I spoke to said they were voting yes. But I can only imagine that it was something to do with the campaign of the no. Like, there was misinformation, and it was some scare campaign. And I mean, the opposition had this, and it wasn't even about the party. So it's annoying that they were bringing in the political parties to it. But the leader of the opposition had a tag of saying, if you don't know, as in KNOW, vote no, which is just like, oh, I just can't even, just depresses me.
I mean, it's the only thing I liken it to is Brexit, which is like, a good majority of the country the UK doesn't interact with politics, and just goes off what they read, either on social media or, the right-wing press. And if you just a diet, like you say, of misinformation and buzzwords and strap lines, you're probably going to go, oh, well, I haven't got time to think about political ramifications of this. I've got to feed my family, or, I've got to go to work, So if someone in charge is telling me that this is a good idea, then I'm going to do it. And, it's a tragedy, really, because it's sort of, we just shot ourselves in the foot a bit.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I think that's, and like you said, these echo chambers that we live in, it must just be, so much harder for, actual truth to get through.
Totally, yeah. But are you, would you go back to, are you thinking of going back to it? Are you happy doing the art? Do you feel satisfied doing art, or is it always something in the back of your mind that you'd like to go back to doing live work at any point?
I definitely still have cravings for it, but I do feel like I hit a point doing particularly stand-up. I don't know, I just didn't want to do the slog of, like, the gigs. Like, going around and waiting, especially if you're like headlining or towards the end, and it's a long, like, wait through all the different acts, and then you get up and then you do your thing, and then you're like wired, and then you got to go to bed. And I don't know, I just felt really uninspired, and the more and more I kind of had to drag myself there. And then I thought, and then I was thinking, like, I don't know if I have anything I really want to say in this forum right now. And if I don't, just, why am I taking up space right now? Someone else with something better to say would come along. So yeah, for now, I don't know, until the day I feel really inspired to jump up. But I do miss performing. Like, I think I get a bit of that craving when I'm doing the presenting stuff and things like that. But I do miss that interaction of being on stage with the audience and stuff.
And how do you feel in yourself at the moment? That obviously we can talk about the fact you've just produced a human into the world.
I definitely feel if I'm not being in some way creative, whether it's drawing or whatever, I get a bit down, and like I definitely feel like that feeds my soul, and that really excites me and gets my spark going. But as how I'm feeling now, I think, I'm feeling pretty good, like, considering, the whole experience of childbirth. I wouldn't recommend labor if anyone's trying to, like, sell that. Yeah, that was not great.
Was it, I mean, let's go into some gory details if you're happy to. Was it a long process for you? And did you, because when we did it, I was just like, you just have everything, I know some people are like, I'm going to go through some on my own steam and like an Earth Mother thing. But I was like, if that was me, I'd be like, just all the drugs, please.
I know. You probably, this is a common saying, like, oh, if guys gave birth, it'd be painless and like,
yeah.
But they would have come up with some solution better than they have. But the pregnancy was pretty fine. Like, I feel like I probably don't want to say this too loudly, but yeah, I didn't have any of those really bad pregnancy symptoms. But then, the labor was like 17 hours. And I just had a fear of the epidural just because of the spine stabbingness of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just like, that's my spine. I know they're safe. I know they know what they're doing, but like, I was wanting to avoid it just because I was a bit scared of that. But so we started at like 11 p.m. And then I think I was, the first place I was laboring for a while, and they're like, we can give you some gas. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. Didn't do anything, but it was nice to like have some regulation of the breathing. And then they were like, oh, we can give you some morphine. I'm like, yeah, I think it's time for morphine now. Did not touch the sides. I was like, it was like I had nothing.
Really? Yeah.
And then they moved me into this other area because they're like, you're spurting blood that's quite bright. And I was like, oh, is that not what's meant to happen? Okay. So they moved me over, and then they were like, epidural, and my midwife was like, oh, she's going to try and stop. I was like, no, give it to me. I think at that point I could only manage a thumbs up, and that epidural, they told me it would take 20 minutes, and I was like staring at that clock, and it was just the best thing in the world. What I thought was really interesting prior to giving birth was I was trying to suss out with all my friends and relatives and, my mom, what does the labor pains feel like? Because everyone talks about how they're the most painful thing in the world. But I was like, what kind of pain? Is it a cramping pain? Is it a stabbing? And everyone's just like, I don't know, it's painful. And then when you go through it and you're like, oh my gosh, that is so painful. But yeah, I don't think I could describe it either now.
Right. I like
someone came to me like, what kind of pain?
You were very polite about that, weren't you? Oh my gosh, that's really just sting, that doesn't.
With a little bit of a sting there. Oh yeah, so that is weird that now, it is a thing where it's so painful. It's like there's no way to describe it.
And have you, so speaking to a friend recently, is just they've got a young baby as well, and I'm sort of interested about how kids are raised and what they get into via osmosis and that sort of thing. I mean, I guess it's hard to sort of know what you're influencing kids and what you're doing in that sort of thing, and what's going into sort of child brain. But I mean, would you presume you'd be sort of cultivating an interest in art, or are you sort of like, if they're into that, that's fine?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Whatever. My partner is an architect,
right.
And he's prior to that, he's like an engineer. So like she could go really technical and be a precise sort of person that I am not. So that's also a possibility, or whatever, her own thing. But I mean, I like singing to her, and I really like reading to her. Although she's only 3 months, she can do a really good stank eye, which she's done to me quite a few times, and I've been trying to sing to her, especially when I forget the words. It's offensive. But yeah, I don't know if that'll seep in, just that maybe the love of words and rhythm and that sort of stuff, or if none of it matters really, and this is what we're doing to get through the days.
Thank you for watching that episode. I saw your Instagram story about it.
I watched it again today.
Did you?
Yes, 2 times.
Wow, appreciate you doing that. Are you a fan of X-Files? Have you ever been a fan?
I like, because I was looking up when I was rewatching, I was like, when was this made? When it first came out, it was 93. I didn't realize it was that early in the 90s. So I was a little bit young at the beginning to get it, but I think all the reruns and stuff, I was watching it. And it felt like, when I was younger, like confusing, like, whoa, what is this show? It's all these wild concepts. But going back and rewatching them as well, and then watching them when I'm a bit older, they're really great. I did notice that in the episode that we watched for this podcast, that I really think that we don't appreciate the acting skills that were going on, because the script was pretty good. But really, if it wasn't for David and Gillian really committing to those lines and that quest for the truth, I don't think it would be as enjoyable.
They really sell it. And I think Gillian Anderson more so than Duchovny, who plays it fairly like louche quite a lot of the time. But she's just remarkable. And yeah, you're totally right that a lot of these lines are fairly silly. There's a season 1, episode 10, Fallen Angel, and it's a classic X-Files start. It's we're in the woods at night, but there's a fireball. There's something going on. Big fireball, big flames. Police officer turns up to go and investigate it. And then rather than staying there, we get this kind of cut to sort of NASA-style space surveillance center, but it's manned by the military. And the commander's informed that there's been a bogey has gone down. And they go, oh, nothing moves like that, Captain. No aircraft can possibly move like that. And he was like, it's a meteor. Write it down. It's a meteor. So there's obviously a cover-up going on there. He makes a phone call to someone a bit higher up. And then we go back to the police officer who essentially gets vaporized by a white light.
It's great special effects of his vaporization
yeah.
as well. But I have to say that, like, I have 2 goals in my life in terms of acting. I would love to just be on any period piece, and that was like a long-running show that I get to dress up in costume and wigs every day. And the second one is to be that bit player that is at the beginning of X-Files that, ooh, what's going on? What the heck?
Yes.
And then dead.
Yes.
That would be the best to play that character. Because that's a kind of, as you said, a classic reoccurring character.
It's kind of like the equivalent of being in Casualty over here. So it's like, oh, he's booked himself on X-Files. God, he booked an X-File. I'd like.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I sort of like where this one went. I mean, I guess, do you believe in any of this stuff? Are you like open-minded, not open-minded, but do you consider yourself a sort of spiritual person, or is there anything where you go, well, I believe in ghosts, but I don't believe in aliens?
I'm open for it all. If anyone wants to have a conversation with me from the past life or from intergalactic space, I'm very open for it. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be like that character Max on the show that's just like traveling around. But then it turns out, I don't know if we don't want to plot spoil it, but maybe there's a reason that he's following around aliens. So I am just sitting on the fence here and saying yes to all.
Great, I'm pleased to hear that.
But I don't think I'm a very spiritual person. I don't know. Otherwise,
I'm glad to hear you're a believer. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the thing with this is it's like, oh, the aliens are invisible now, are they? Like it's a kind of Predator style thing, because you're kind of learning. I don't know, because I mean, I've sort of rewatching this and forgetting, is it all going to add up? Are we going to get to a point where you go, oh yeah, we'll just tick this list off, like the aliens can do this, this and this because this was set up in this and they're invisible, but I'm not sure anybody's going to have written it all down, or
Exactly. And the other I thought was like wildly ambitious of the military. It was like they put up those electric fences,
right?
And they were like, oh, this is going to hold this being or alien or whatever. They don't know what it is. They were really quick at putting those electric fences up. They were like right up there. And then the classic red neon beam line, and that I just thought that was their best defense at holding it in.
It's funny how quaint it is a lot of the time. It's sort of, and what can we show? Because we've got a budget. It's like, what's going to show this in as quick a time as possible? But,
Yeah, I was always just going to say, like, Mulder, like, he tries quite a few times to breach this perimeter where they're, like, containing this alien. And it's, heavily guarded, but he seems to always get through all, the barriers that were stopping this ultra smart alien, but he can get through. And then when he gets through, he always gets caught.
I mean, that's fantastic,
every
isn't it?
time.
It's like, I don't know why you're even bothering taking photos of this Mulder, because that camera's definitely going to get thrown in a bin at some point. There was, I had a nice comment, someone commented on on Twitter on the podcast going, the X-Files would be totally redundant if Mulder was carrying a camera and documenting all this. I was like, they're not going to let him get away with that. They're not going to let him do a degree, obviously a degree show, but, a gallery piece about what he's seen is like, they're going to take that.
Yeah, definitely. Because in this episode, he goes back just randomly. Like, the other thing about this episode, I don't know if this is just me being like, oh, I've had no sleep with a 3-month-old, but the timelines, like, it's meant to be within 24 hours, but I swear there's like 2 day and nights in that one episode where it's meant, because Scully's always like, we've got to go for this hearing. It starts in an hour.
Yeah.
But then they do 10 other things.
Like, they try to keep 3 sort of plates spinning at any one time, don't they? So it's like, it's pretty much Mulder's episode. Yeah. What are we going to do with Scully? And then there's some kind of backdrop to create a sort of time frame. But I sort of did like how it was Mulder's equivalent to like that Bond film License to Kill, where he just goes rogue. And how do we depict Mulder going rogue? Yeah. He's wearing a big leather jacket.
Love it. That's like evil Mulder, like rogue Mulder going in his leather jacket. And I loved, this character Max, who is like the member of the NICAP, I think it is. Fanboying over Mulder. But I love that bit where Mulder gets out, Scully gets him out of the little military jail hold. He goes back to his hotel room and it's trashed. But if you rewatch it, it is trashed. Like, the lamps are falling over, the phone's off the hook. There's like papers are strewn everywhere. There's like a glass of half a drink on the counter. Like, they have gone to town, and you think, oh, whoa, it's definitely, and it's Max. And I'm like, and he's like, I was just trying to find out if it was really you by putting the phone off the hook. Like, right. I don't know why he went that large on it. Like, he didn't need to.
I absolutely love the fact that that's how they depict a trash room as well. Like, it's like, Mulder, the wardrobe door's slightly ajar. Someone's been in here. Someone has definitely been in here. No, he's great. Like,
not subtle.
He's great, that character, because he's kind of, I guess, a sort of precursor to the Lone Goodman. Those like Mulder's sort of crack team of boffins and nerds. I like how that sort of, he's almost like, he's sort of got a standard podcast setup, hasn't he, in the trailer? There's like, what's he listed in on in here? Like a kind of precursor to the sort of alt-right podcasting that's going on. But I loved that. I really liked him.
And he's parked right outside the hotel. Yeah, he was a great character. It's sad that, tugged on the heartstrings that he didn't quite make it out the other side of the episode.
Yeah, and we've got, I mean, it's a good effect, isn't it? That sort of floating thing at the beginning and at the end, and they're not always good effects in the X-Files.
And then all that's left of Max is his cap, his NICAP cap, and Mulder picks it up like, you were too late.
I think, I'm sure Mulder's just collecting all this paraphernalia. It's like he's just wrecking lives, and he's got his little collection.
Just like, because that's another thing about this timeline is like when he sees the little mark on the back of Max's ear, and then he's like goes back to his hotel room that was trashed a couple of hours ago. He has all these case files on people with that little same mark, and I'm like, it's almost like he knew.
Yes.
It's almost like he knew. What are the chances of bringing those case files? It's like printed out pictures of other people with the same mark.
I mean, that'd be. You've hit on something better than the X-Files there, where it's like Mulder's actually responsible for the whole thing.
Oh.
And he's like facilitating all these like ridiculous supernatural activity. So I think there's something in that. when they come back again in like 20 years time, and it's sort of old Mulder and Scully. But also we got Marshall Bell in there playing the kind of devious military captain, and people probably know him from, he plays Quato in Total Recall, and his face pops up a lot in the 80s.
Because can you imagine, like, the other thing I was really impressed with was when I was looking to watch this episode, They greenlit, I think it's 24 episodes in the first season and then 25 in season 2. So were they just really, the network was really sure of this? I mean, because it's a big chance, I think, if someone brought up the X-Files are like, we're going to do this wild show.
Yeah.
Maybe the actors were the things that grounded it.
Yeah, it's pretty out. Well, obviously it's out there, but but you're totally right. As anyone signing up on 24 episodes of this is, I don't know how they sold that.
Yeah.
And there's 11 seasons of it. I mean, towards the end they get to like 6 episodes a season. I'm glad you got so much out of it. I know it's an ask to sit down and watch some old TV, but do you think you'll revisit the rest of the show? Do you think it's inspired you to watch?
Well, yeah. After I watched this, I did go back and watch the first ever episode to the pilot.
Right.
Because I was like, maybe I'll find time to watch right up to the episode that we're talking about. But with a 3-month-old, no, that did not happen. But I did watch that one. And so I think for those moments when I'm stuck and pinned on the couch because she'll only sleep on me, I'll revisit and go through them.
Well, I mean, if you manage, it's difficult, but if you manage, you could do one a week. I've realised I've really set myself up for a fall with this podcast because there's 218 episodes, and if I release one episode a week without any breaks, that's 4 years of my life committed to this. So and I hope people do continue and join us on the journey. But you've got plenty of time. It's just people keep making stuff, don't they? Go, oh, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. Have you seen this big blockbuster thing? That's like, I ain't got time, and I don't know what. It sounds like you're like me. It's like you put something on for 20 minutes, and then your head starts nodding on the sofa.
Yeah. Well, honestly, this is the most adult conversation I've had in months. So I feel like my mouth isn't even properly working to get words out. So it's been a wild ride. But pre giving birth, I did have a lot of time because I was just very pregnant, and I got to watch things like All of the Bear. Oh, I enjoyed that so much.
Wonderful. That's
So there's things out there if you do get a chance.
Yeah. Oh, that's it's such a great show, and the guy who plays, I can't remember his name, Eben. The guy who plays cousin is just bang on. Have you seen both seasons of it?
Yes. And I love it, especially because, my family lived just near Chicago as well. And I just love how much of Chicago they show too. But the actual characters are so great. The script is great. That I never thought, it's so tense being in a kitchen. It's really, really like as dramatic as some, Westerosi plot or something before it went to shit.
He's, the episode where he's like, they basically sent him off to a fine dining restaurant to learn to be a maitre d', and then he starts singing Taylor Swift in the car because it's all gone so well. It's really good. Yes. Really good. Well, that's nice.
So good. I love it. The soundtrack is really good too, I thought.
Yeah, is that Sufjan Stevens? And do you know what? There is that kind of guitar cue. The like one when it's all kicking off, digga 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 digga. That's it's Refused. It's the like punk band Refused, who've since come back and basically everybody's got to make a living. I was going to say they've sold out. They were like, oh, we're just a punk band, we're doing 2 albums and then that's it. We made this incredible landmark album, we're not doing anymore, we don't care about the money. And then, everybody's got a mortgage now. So fair play, fellas. We've all got to eat.
Yeah, so we're not, this isn't a bear podcast. I've just derailed it.
I was going to say, do you get back to Chicago?
Oh, well, I haven't been since COVID.
Right.
I really want to go. Yeah, I love it. I don't know. It's got such a lovely vibe. Growing up, my dad didn't read books to me, but he would make stories and just tell them up to me. Like he had this saga about bunyips that lived in the park next to us.
Oh, right.
Do you know what a bunyip is?
No, please tell me. Yeah.
It's like a mythical creature. I always think it kind of looks like, I don't know. Do you remember dinosaurs? That TV show where they were like puppets?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I feel like it's like that shape of a it's kind of a dinosaur, but like a swamp creature. But the way my dad told it was it's just this intricate network of councils of bunyips that would have to go get permission from another council. It was very bureaucratic.
Wow.
And then they'd eat like grass weed that would make them fart, and this other weed that would make them have a sore stomach. And I don't know, that he stretched that out for years. So my reason of bringing that up was that I think my ideas of Chicago and all that stuff is like tied up with this weird nostalgia.
Right.
But like memories I've never had, but that connection. But it is just a really good city too.
I love that
Besides
his thoughts, he sat down and wrote a novella before he presented that story.
Yeah, he never wrote it down. I feel like he needs. I don't know how he made it so interesting, but with some of the when you actually think about the context. But the only book he ever read to me as a bedtime story, and I don't know where he got this from, was a book about all the attempts of going over Niagara Falls.
What, in like a bath and that sort of thing, is it?
That's the only book.
Oh, I can see why you like the X-Files so much, because this is your jam, isn't it?
We're going back to that, like going back to imprinting. Maybe you were talking about how much you imprint on your child. Maybe this is all making sense. And this was a really good free therapy session for me.
Believe Me is written and edited by me, Chris Boyd, with production support from Steve Marshall. The music is by Johnny Boyle, and our logo is by Russ Brown. See you out there next time.